Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining Starting and Growing Resilient Communities. This is our fifth installment. Today, we'll be talking about how to tell your community story. Panelists will be myself, Sissy White, who is our Northeast Community Facilitator, and also the Community Manager for Parenting with ACEs, and Carrie Sipp, who is our Southeast Community Facilitator, and she's also our Communication Lead. I'd like to take this time to ask you to join ACEs Connection. Please join as a member at www.acesconnection.com. So first, some housekeeping. No need to raise your hand. There is a Q&A icon for questions. Please use that throughout the session. The questions that will be put in the Q&A will be answered as we get to the end of the presentation. This session will be recorded and will be available for future viewing. And if you have any questions or concerns that are not addressed here, we should be able to address them at acesconnection.com. So ACEs Connection, we are supporting communities to accelerate the ACEs science and also solve our most intractable problems. We're a social network started in 2012 by Jane Stevens. And we recognize the impact of the wide variety of ACEs in shaping adult behavior and health, and that promotes trauma-informed resiliency building practices and policies in all families, organizations, systems, and communities. We have about 30,000 members with over 150 communities across the world. We're international. And we would also like to invite you, if you're not already, to become a member, but also to become a member of your local initiative that you can find on the site under the Communities tab. If your local ACEs initiative is not represented under the Communities tab, please feel free to join us as a community. We have community facilitators across the country who will help facilitate that, and I will share their information at the end of the session. So today we're going to go over the series overview. We're going to talk about the GRC 2.0, Growing Resilient Communities, which is ACEs Connections model for community involvement. And then we'll talk about telling your community story on the AC site. And then we'll highlight those social media rock stars. Just to give an overview, our past sessions, we had a series overview and introduction to the site. We talked about organizing your ACEs initiative, and we helped with formulating mission and value statements and creating norms. In March, we talked about launching an ACEs initiative, where we focused on how you can garner support in your community. April, we discussed becoming trauma-informed. May was rescheduled to today, where we'll talk about how to tell your community story and go over why it's so critical to be involved in social media and get the word out about what you're doing, and also archive your movement. And then also later in June, it has June 21st as the scheduled date, but I will be rescheduling that until the very last Friday in June, which should be June 28th. And then we'll discuss developing leaders within your ACEs initiative, focusing on strength-based assessments. My next step will be to send out a survey. What I'm looking for is topics that you find interesting so that we can cater to our audience as we move into the second part of the year. So be on the lookout for that survey via email. So now we're going to talk about GRC 2.0, Growing Resilient Communities 2.0. Today we'll focus on the Celebrate section. So as you can see here, the motto is to educate, engage, activate, and then celebrate. The whole purpose of this is really to provide some guidelines on how to start and organize and maintain ACEs initiative in your local area. You can find all of the information pertaining to GRC 2.0 on the home page. In the left side of your screen, and you have to scroll down and you will find this icon. There's an interactive graphic. There's also links to starting your own community. And then there's some links to some blogs that will help you to get started. One of the blogs that we'll go over today is Steps to Growing Resilient Communities 2.0. This blog was written by our very own Jane Stevens, and it focuses on the 4 tenets of GRC 2.0. And so first we have educate, and this is really about making sure that you're raising awareness of ACEs, teaching everyone about ACEs science, and so that's going to look like developing presentations or using some that are already existing, like you can find on our site in the Resource Center, and making sure that everyone is aware of trauma-informed and resilience-building practices. Next is engage, and this is going to be people and organizations beginning to be more involved in your movement. This is going to look like keeping track of those who receive education, sending out constant communication, bringing in organizations to the fold. And then once you have built up some engagement in the community, then you move into number 3, which is activate. And so this is when we're looking for commitment to integrating trauma-informed and resiliency-building practices so that we can begin systems change. So this is going to be involving your local politicians. This is going to be changing policy. And then 4, which we'll be discussing today, is celebrate. And so this is accomplishments that your organization has that need to be highlighted and get it out the word about what you guys are doing on social media, especially on ACEs Connection, which is like the Facebook of the ACEs initiative. And so the 2 parts of GRC 2.0 Celebrate is really telling your story and hosting events. And so when we're talking about telling your story, this is going to be helping people to understand that learning about ACEs science and implementing these practices is going to make their local area happier and healthier and safer. And it's really also going to impact the bottom line. So when it comes to city and state, there is money that can be saved by making your local area healthier and safer. And so there is also the bottom line that there's a benefit there as well. And then you want to document your efforts. Data is very important here so that you can first learn from your experiences. You can learn from your own experiences, and then others can learn from your experiences. And then this is also very helpful in getting those funds. So when you're applying for grants and people can see that what you're doing has results and is helping the community, then you're more likely to get those funds. And so what does that look like? It's going to look like posting about your presentation. So let's say you do a presentation at a local organization, make sure you take pictures and you write a blog about it. It's also going to be keeping track of your minutes. It's going to be tweeting out or posting on ACEs Connection around things that have happened. So let's say a local health clinic has started their trauma-informed journey, or a pediatric clinic is now doing screenings, or an elementary school is seeing some progress. These are things that you can put out into the world that will make sure that everybody is up to date on what's going on with you. And like it says here, no item is too small to post. You want to keep a very good record of your initiative. And so you want to post about everything. You want to keep a calendar of events, so that includes presentations. You want to keep up with all of your documents, so your minutes, everything needs to be archived. And this is something that people kind of overlook, because you can always take those documents, and if you have them, you can go back and look at progress made, which can be very evident when you go back to those first documents and you track what you had in your strategic plan or what goals you had. And then you get a year or 2 out and you can look back and say, oh, we did all of these things. And so this is really what's, celebrating is about. You are celebrating your accomplishments. And the only way to make sure that you can keep track of those is to have a good archive of your movement. And it's also going to look like reaching out to your local media. So you want to make sure that you're reaching out to local newspapers, magazines, you're doing radio interviews, and of course, social media. You want to make sure that everyone knows what you're doing through all the media outlets. And then, of course, most importantly, it's going to be gathering your local data. And so if you want to know if your initiative is having an impact on school attendance, or if it's having an impact on the amount of emergency room visits, or is it having an impact on the amount of people who are interfacing with your local nonprofit. So you want to keep track of all of those things. And of course, what you keep track of is dependent on the mission that your organization has. But once you are getting out there and you're educating people about ACES science, then you want to see what are those results. You can also look into getting a community tracker and a milestones tracker. These are things that will help you to determine where your community is as far as education, as far as the trauma-informed process. And so you should contact your ACES Connection community facilitator in your area if you are interested in those types of data trackers. So next we're going to talk about telling your community story. So this is going to be Sissy White. Like I said before, she's our Northeast community facilitator. And she is also the person who runs our Parenting with ACES community. Sissy, thank you for joining us.
Hi Ingrid, thanks everybody. So when we think about telling our community story as individuals or initiatives, we often think of writing, but I want to talk a little bit about today about writing and blogging, but also all the other ways there are to tell our community stories on a social network. Next slide, please.
So just as you don't have to be an athlete to exercise or a singer to sing, you don't have to be a writer to write or to share. So that we're going to talk about the common ways to share on ACES Connection. And I think of everything I want to talk about today, this green post button is what I want to acquaint everyone with. So on the home page of ACES Connection, when you're on your home page on ACES Connection on the main site or within a community site, there's a green post button at the top of the right-hand side of the screen. On that post button, if you click on it, there'll be a pull-down menu, and these are the types of things that you can post. So you can post questions, you can post blogs, you can post resources and videos, and you can post calendar events. So we're going to talk about each of those. Next slide, please. And so we're just going to show a little bit about what that looks like, as well as coming up what we might want to post. So I just wanted to go into a little bit of the basics on how to ask a question on ACES Connection. So again, on ACES Connection, whether you're on the home page, you have this ability to post and ask a question to the community. And when you're within a community, you can ask a specific community, like here, ACES in Education, a question. So on the left-hand side of the screen is just how a question looks when it's asked. And then on the right side is just if you click on post and go down to ask the community, this window is going to pop up. And it's very simple to ask a question. You're just going to give it a title. You're going to describe the question. Right at the top of the page under body, and within the blog, within the post itself, there's some simple formatting tools that you could use for bolding and italicizing and including links or including videos or photos. So that's fairly simple, and everything you do on ACES Connection kind of follows this very similar format. So once you have posted anything on ACES Connection, the next thing you go to post is much easier because the format for posting everything is very similar. So within Ask the Community, when you post, you can also add an attachment. So if you're like, hey, could everybody look at this infographic, or you could hyperlink to it to get some feedback from the whole 33,000 members of ACES Connection and get some feedback, attach a document, and then people can comment right on your Ask the Community question. Also, I just wanted to note that on all your things that you're posting on ACES Connection. You're sharing them on ACES Connection, but then you can also share, there's these social media links at the very bottom, which are circled in orange. So you can share out your stuff on Facebook, on Twitter, on Pinterest, on LinkedIn, etc. You can email stuff. So if you want to forward it along, that's true on all the different types of things we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. This is just, we're going to go and drill down a little bit more into a blog post because this is what people post fairly frequently. So again, you're just going to go to the ACES Connection homepage. If you want to post something to a blog, you're going to pick blog post under post, and then it's going to open up this menu. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to enlarge it a little bit. So when you're in a blog post, this is what you can add. So again, you're going to add your title. When you're in the blog post itself, you're going to have some simple formatting tools. If I had clicked on that arrow under formatting, it would just have things like center and justify, some formatting items. But then also there's bold and italic, there's inserting links, there's inserting photos, there's inserting videos if you want to include video from, say, like Dr. Nadine Burke Harris's TED Talk. You can insert, if you have a YouTube link, you can insert that right into the video so it will play right in the blog post itself. So it's lots of different things you can share. Up on the right-hand side, title image. I highly recommend sharing a title image. Posts that have a title image are much more likely to be read, so it's worth it to add a title image. And to do that, you would just click add title image and insert an image. And then going down to attachments, if there was some attachment that you wanted to add in addition to whatever you've posted, this is where you do it. You would just add attachment. It works very similar to how it works on email. And then you would just hit publish. On ACES Connection, if you were working on something over a day or two, you would hit save as draft, and that gives you the ability to go back and finish it up later. Once you hit publish, it's live. It goes up on the site. There's no editing or moderating content. All members of ACES Connection are welcome to share. It's a social network site like Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter. So we really encourage and welcome everybody to share. Next slide, please. So a little bit about what to post. So I think some people love writing like me. Some people are more terrified of writing than they are of public speaking. The main thing is to share as yourself, sound like yourself. And that is in terms of the style that you're writing in, but also what you're sharing. So you want to be comfortable with what you're sharing and publishing. You can share lots of different types of content. So we have original content. You can be sharing minutes of meetings and just notes. You can be sharing personal essays and reflections. You can be sharing photos of an event that happened that is a celebration. You can be sharing some research and links to other people's research, citing it appropriately, of course, but you can share other information. And then the same thing with curated content. You can share data, you can share news stories, and we'll talk a little bit about how, and you can share reports and resources. So these are all different ways of telling your story online, showing what you're emphasizing on, what you're focusing on, what you're doing, depending on where your initiative is at and what you're doing, or where you're at individually within your initiative. This is going to change and look different. So we welcome it all. All communities are going to do it differently. All are going to do the GRC 2.0 model of engaging and celebrating and activating all at different ways, and we welcome that all. Next slide, please. So these are just some examples. So Greater Richmond, you might be sharing about an event that happens. It might be an event many members of your initiative have attended. It might be an event that your initiative put on. So you might share about an event. You might share, like in ACES and Pediatrics, Lori on our staff, she may be pulling together a bunch of resources, linking to it, and sharing out what might be interesting to the members of ACES and Pediatrics. So you can share content that you've created about an event you've done or that is relevant to your community. Next slide, please. In addition, you might be more comfortable doing a video. So there was this great talk, if you haven't seen it, with Dr. Folletti and Dr. Allman, and it's just a conversation. So you can, if you are a Vimeo person or on YouTube, you're more comfortable telling your story with video, you can share that way. So you can just do the recording as you would do it, and then upload it to ACES Connection, and then you can share that. So again, it's finding what's comfortable and what works for you and what best reflects you and your community. And then also you can share about legislation, you can share about policy, you can share what's happening in your state or near you. And there's lots of different ways to tell what your community is focusing on and what your community has been working on. Next slide, please. And again, you can share events that you've attended and been at. You can share where you are in your own personal ACES journey, and sharing a blog post that's more personal reflection. We just welcome it all. And I just want to show that, you know, whether it's our staff writing, whether it's members writing, whether it's initiative community managers writing, you know, all is welcome and encouraged. Next slide, please. And I also wanted to show with posting, one of the other things you can post besides blog is, as I've mentioned, resources and videos. And I just wanted to show that process, if you've not done it, is actually easier than it might sound. So you would just go down to, you would go to post, right upper hand corner on ACES Connection, pull down menu and go to posting a resource or video. So again, you can share on the ACES Connection homepage, and you can also share within a community site. So to do that, when you hit resources and videos, here's what opens, and then you're just gonna go to Vimeo or YouTube or wherever you're getting your video from, get that source code, put it in here, and then that is going to show your video. So it will play as a resource when it's embedded. And then if you want to upload an image like here so that you see a little preview of the video, you can do that. So I think this is an underutilized tool on ACES Connection because people really enjoy watching videos. Next slide. Again, for posting calendar events, I just wanted to show on the right-hand side, this is how a calendar event looks when it's all done. But if on the left-hand side, you would go to post on ACES Connection, go down to the pull-down window, go to calendar event, and then it's, again, very similar formatting where you're picking an event title, you're putting in a description. What's a little bit different about the calendar is you're adding a location. So whether it's an online location or a physical location, you can include that. And you're also adding in details about the time of the event. So and we have a worldwide network, so just put in the time zone that you're in, and it will adjust for other members to their time zone. So don't worry about that. Just put in the time zone that you're in. And then you can put an event photo, an event picture, and again, anything with a photo is more likely to be looked at. And then the other thing about the calendar event that's a little different than other things is it does allow you to it supports RSVPs. So you have some settings on a calendar event that you can look at, and that's a tool that's functional if you would like it. And then on the bottom right-hand side, and when it shows you who is attending this event, you know, you have some options there for collecting that information as well. Next slide, please. So now I want to go into communities a little bit. And another way of telling stories is the way that a community is customized and set up. So all communities are different, and the information shared on community pages is different, and that's another way of telling your story. So I want to go just to remind people that from the home page, you're just going to go to communities. It will bring you to a list of all the hundreds of communities we have on ACES Connection. Next slide, please. And then now these are some samples of when you're in a community, the different types of things that people share. And these are shared in what are the widgets. So the widgets are just like on the home page of ACES Connection, you have the banner at the top, you have the blog post on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side are our static features, and those are what we call widgets. Within those widgets can be customized. So different communities share different things in their widgets, and this is another way of telling a community story. So in this community, there's the presentation tracker. So it's just showing where has your community been, what have they been up to. Next slide, please. And you're also can show who you're working with. So that's another part of your story. Who is your initiative working with? And that can be included right on your community homepage. Next slide, please. And then this is data. So some people are wanting to, ACEs across the lifespan in your state. You can actually capture that and share that on your homepage as well to draw people's attention to it, as well as to draw people to other communities. If you're in a statewide community and you want to share out, okay, where are other local initiatives within my state, this is where you do so. Next slide, please, just wrap it up. So then these are just ideas of if your initiative has worked on something over a year, like in Massachusetts, there are elements of an effective plan of safe care. You can anchor that right on the homepage as a way to drive people's attention right to what your initiative has been working on. Next slide, and we're almost done. And then this is just if you want to show video right from the homepage, not just within a blog, but within a widget. Here's another place to do it so you can emphasize something that a community has been working on and you're highlighting and celebrating there. So thank you.
Thank you, Sissy. Thank you for sharing this information with us. Next, we're going to move on to some of our social media rock stars that we have here. This is going to be facilitated by Carrie Sipp. She's actually our communication lead here for ACES Connection. Let's see. Hi, Carrie.
Hi there. Hope you can hear me okay.
Yep, we can.
Great, thanks so much. So anybody can be a social media rock star with ACES Connection. We're going to highlight some work that a few people are doing, but you too can leverage the content that you see on ACES Connection and share it out on your personal social media sites. You can share out the information that you post about your community. We're going to look at what Robin Cogan, who is a school nurse, and she has a blog that she posts frequently on ACES Connection. And we'll just show you how her branding kind of carries across on the different social media platforms. But here she is on ACES Connection. We are a social media platform as well. Next slide. She is also on Twitter, and on Twitter she has grown her following to almost 4,000 followers. And she will take a post that she posts on ACES Connection and post it on Twitter, and may also post it on, next slide please, LinkedIn. And this conveniently takes us to, as Sissy was pointing out, at the end of each blog post, be it a blog post that you do within your community about something about your community, or if it's a post that you see on the homepage that you think is important, that you want people in your community and your social network communities to know about, all you have to do to share out that piece is use the social media buttons at the end of each ACES Connection blog. This is the end of one of Robin's blog. When you share out these posts, this helps advance the ACES movement by raising awareness about ACES science. And it may also prompt one of the people who follows you on Facebook, LinkedIn, Pinterest, wherever, Reddit, to join ACES Connection as well. And we're at 35,000 members, and we welcome new members. It's free to join, as you well know. Next slide. Robin is a special friend because she has really taken great strides in teaching her nursing students. She's a school nurse and she teaches nursing, how to use blogging and social media to advocate for causes. And that's really what we're doing. We're advocating to help grow the ACES science movement, to help prevent childhood trauma, to help people heal from childhood trauma, and to help communities put in place the trauma-informed methods that can help prevent traumatizing already traumatized people, and can help educate people as to how to prevent trauma in the first place. So this is something that Robin deeply believes in, the power of social media. And we may do a deeper dive with her in a upcoming webinar. Next slide, please. So she advocates are using social media to inform, educate, and advocate. You know, it's information. People love to learn things. That's why they go to the internet, is to be educated, entertained, and entertained, and moved. So this is providing for them in the areas that they like to learn, in the containers in which they like to learn, be it Twitter, be it Pinterest, be it LinkedIn or Facebook, the information that they want to see. They've opted to see the information that you're posting, so you're sharing it. It's just giving them what they want. Next slide, please. Robin's also on LinkedIn, and you can post to LinkedIn. This is fun. This is very cool. You can post to LinkedIn if you're a member of LinkedIn. If you're a member of LinkedIn, go find the ACES Connection, new ACES Connection page on LinkedIn, and click that you want to follow that immediately. We would appreciate that. But as you're posting on LinkedIn, if you post from ACES Connection to LinkedIn, if you'll notice on LinkedIn, there is a way to have your LinkedIn post also go to your Twitter account. And so then you get a kind of a 2-for-1 with that. So you can post on LinkedIn and have it set to share your post on Twitter, which is really cool. And incredibly effective and efficient, because then your posts get seen sometimes twice by the same people. Next slide, please. As you can see, Robin has her Twitter following of 33, well, as I said, almost 4,000. But also you can see that some of us, we all follow each other, and sometimes Twitter is where we meet each other, and that's actually where some of us met Robin for the first time. And then meeting her in person was especially fun. Next slide, please. Another social media rock star, of course, is Nadine Burke-Harris. She's got 24,400 followers, and you know, she is taking the ACES movement out in a big way as the Surgeon General of the state of California. And she's good at hashtagging and at tagging. Next slide, please. In this post, she tagged the Sesame Street workshop. Sometimes she tags ACES Connection. She'll tag donors to her Center for Youth Wellness, but she will raise the number of people who see, like, or share her tweet by tagging it. And in this case, by tagging at Sesame Street workshop, this post was shared 194 times and liked by 515 people. So you'll add to the number of people who see your tweet, and maybe will join your community by tagging the name of your city. You might also want to tag the name of elected officials in your area. If you want to do something fun that I like to do, sometimes I'll just go on and tag a presidential candidate. I'll tag NBC Nightly News. I'll tag Oprah, because you never know when somebody's going to see something that might move them. And it just adds to the number of people who will see your tweet. Next slide, please. Case in point, so Donna Jackson Nakazawa, who wrote Childhood Disrupted, which is a seminal book in the ACES movement, there is a community on ACES Connection with her work on it. Next slide, please. She is on Twitter as well. She has 2,300 followers. So when something posts on her community, then it can post to Twitter. And this is great because it gets the messages of her book out, which the messages of her books are the same messages that we want to put out, that toxic childhood stress changes the function and the structure of the developing brain, and she also provides solutions. And so we like aligning ourselves with her, and we tag each other back and forth a lot. Next slide, please. She is also on LinkedIn, and sometimes she'll post on LinkedIn, and then that will post directly to her Twitter account. Next slide, please. And then she's on Facebook. So she kind of has and I don't know, she may have an Instagram account as well. She probably does, but she certainly has a lot of followers, 14,221 people like her page with Facebook. Next slide, please. Twitter is sometimes, as I said, the first place we meet someone in the ACEs movement, and it's fun to then meet them live and in person. Their Twitter personality is often exactly who they are, because Twitter posts are, in essence, little mini blogs. But because I had tagged Michael McKnight, who is an ACEs advocate in New Jersey, and Donna Jackson Nakazawa in the same post, the two of them actually ended up getting to meet each other. They knew to look for each other at an event where they were both attending. And you can make introductions this way too. It's easy to do this with relational tagging. In this post, I'm Turnaround Mom, and Michael is McKnight 32, as you can see. Next slide, please. And then here is Michael's this is his Twitter page. I'm sorry, this is his Twitter page. And on Twitter, he posts many of the same things that he posts on LinkedIn, but by posting Echo Parenting's graphics, he has the potential of introducing his 1,800 followers to trauma-informed parenting and so much more. He's an educator. And I'll tell you an interesting story about him. Next slide, please. Is Michael has more than 16,000 followers on LinkedIn. And he actually met his writing partner, a professor in Indiana, was reading one of his posts on LinkedIn and sent him a message and said, hey, we need to write a book together. And the two of them ended up, they've written 2 books together, and they're working on a third. So you never know who you're going to meet on social and what could come of it. But it's, again, as I've emphasized, it's valuable to share the same posts that you post from ACEs Connection to LinkedIn and Twitter. You help share the messages and the movement. Next slide, please. So again, just a little bit more about this is that by posting on LinkedIn and by growing such a vast following, 16,091 followers, Michael is taking the message about trauma-informed learning. He's heard also from people in Australia and South Africa. So I think social media, we are a social media platform. That is how ACEs Connection is in 27 countries in just 6 years. Pretty amazing, huh? Next slide, please. Michael is really good at this. He says he's a very visual person, and he chooses crisp, clean graphics and shares poster-like posts educating his followers about trauma-informed education in communities. So I just particularly like the clean things that he posts on LinkedIn, and I often repost them on LinkedIn, and then they go directly to my Twitter account as well. Thanks. Next slide, please. So people wonder, should they use Twitter? And this is a slide that we picked up out of Robin Cogan's wonderful presentation. And Twitter can be a lot of fun. I will admit to you that the first time I tweeted, I was a little nervous about it. But once you get the hang of it, and the beauty of Twitter is that if you post something that you don't like, you can easily delete it. But we have access to the internet. Most of us love to learn and to share and have a growth mindset. And it's fun to make these connections. And hey, we live in a country where we can freely post what we want to. So using Twitter with caution is a way to leverage talking about advocating for causes that you care about. You obviously care about the ACEs movement, or you wouldn't be involved in it. And so this is an easy way for you to share the information that you read and like on ACES Connection with people that you know and people that you don't. Next slide, please. So yes, you should use Twitter. That's the bottom line. So help us grow the movement by sharing out ACES Connection, the articles that matter to you within your community, your ACES Connection community. You can, the same thing, the blog posts from your community, there's a way that ACES Central Florida, that people can know what's going on in ACES Central Florida all over the world. If when there's a blog post on ACES Central Florida, they tweet it out, or they share it on Facebook, or they post it on LinkedIn. And if you tag a policymaker friend or use a hashtag, such as we encourage people to use ACES Science and then to use the link ACES Connection, because then that means what you post will in turn post on the ACES Connection Twitter site. Then that helps us get the word out. And if you link, again, to your local civic leaders, policymakers, elected officials, and even, as I said, at Oprah, at NBC News, at Trauma Informed PBS, at CBS, and other journalism sites, sources, places, your local media, at the Charlotte Observer, at the Tampa Tribune, at wherever it is that you live, the Montgomery Times, just to go on and share with them so they will know that these are topics that are important to people in their reading and viewing area. Next slide, please. An example of this is that this morning, Robin Sanger, who started the first trauma-informed community in the United States, and I have actually been to it and am a big fan of Tarpon Springs, Florida. Robin has leveraged social media in a fabulous way with a Facebook account. She also has a ACES Connection page, and she also has a Twitter account. But she posted this morning a kind of a reflection on having helped start the movement 10 years ago, and kind of where it is now, how much she appreciates the work that has happened, that has come. And so I took that blog post right from ACES Connection and posted it on LinkedIn. And then next slide, please. Tagged it to my Twitter account. On Twitter, I'm at Turnaround Mom. And then you'll see that I put the hashtag ACES Science and ACES Connection in there. Next slide, please. And then because I had done that, there the post shows up on ACES Connection. And then I went back in from my personal account and I tagged Sissy and Ingrid and Karen and other people with whom I work at ACES Connection. And I did some wild tagging with Oprah and NBC Nightly News and Trauma Informed PBS, because you never know when we might help Robin Sanger get a great story about what's going on in, with the Peace for Tarpon community, and that helps spread the word about the good work of pulling cross-sector communities together, everybody working to help prevent trauma, and then what the results are 10 years later. The crime rate has dropped, the high school graduation rate has gone up. This is what we need to celebrate. We need to be celebrating these. These are good news stories. People are hungry for good news stories. So next slide, please. Or I think that's the end of that. So any questions? And we can all come back for the questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Carrie. That was very informational. And I think a lot of people have issues or just have some hesitancy in engaging with social media. And so I hope that this webinar helped them to feel more confident and more savvy engaging in social media. At this point, I don't have any questions in the Q&A, but I do want to take any last comments before we close out. And let's see. So I'll start with you, Sissy. What is something that you want to leave our audience with as it pertains to social media, using the AC site, and telling their story?
I just want to encourage people not to be afraid. I think when it comes to posting, a lot of people are reticent. They're not sure, like, who has the right to share? You know, can I share? Am I allowed to share? Can I post? And yes, everyone can post. You're posting as a member, and you can share in whatever way and style and format that you're comfortable, but it's just like you probably want to know what other communities are doing. People want to know what you're doing. So I think there's a lot of humble people, and they don't necessarily feel comfortable putting their own name out there, or they're not sure about speaking for their initiative. But I just think of it as more like a photo album, and you might be getting day-to-day daily tasks like minutes recorded and shared, or you might be doing big celebrations, but it doesn't have to be like a completely finished product, a really in-depth research thing. Anything you share is gonna be informational and interesting to other people. And I would just say, and you can sound like yourself. You know, you don't have to have it be super polished and edited. Just a short little piece is great. So I would just recommend that people share something.
Yeah.
An idea about that, to take a picture of people at your ACES initiative meeting, post that, tag all the people in the picture, then they'll get that. They'll see it on ACES Connection. They can share it out. They're proud of the work they're doing. If they're on LinkedIn and Twitter, and then they tag, your local officials or your local media, or even big national media, you never know when a story might be told, because people are looking for good news. And so if at one of your committee meetings of your initiative, or at one of your big initiative meetings, you just snap a picture. You can live tweet it, or you can post it on ACES Connection, and then tweet it, tag it to LinkedIn too. There's no telling where that story could land. And if you put something interesting in the cut line about, have been working with first responders to help people learn how to self-regulate during a crisis, or something like that, and you put hashtag crisis, hashtag trauma informed, hashtag ACES science, hashtag first responders, that may drive people to the ACES Connection website who might not have visited before, and we may get 5 new members because you shared out. So think of it as being a cheerleader for the movement. We are all our own little publishers now with these tools, and we can all publish good news, and the world is hungry for it. And there is a lot of good news, and we need to be sharing results. The return on investment of trauma-informed practices and policies.
That is perfect. And I would add, in my experience thus far with social media, I found that it is really helpful to really highlight those small presentations. I do a lot of community education. And so I might have a very small event at the health department and use social media as a way to draw people to come in. And that is how I get people who are just kind of not in the movement. So a lot of times when I do community education, I get not the same old people. I love that they come every time, but they are working with, they're working directly with children and families. They're part of nonprofits, and we really want to broaden out to the larger community. And so, your everyday person needs to know about ACEs, and that can happen through social media. And so when I put out the event into social media or other different avenues that are outside of the normal ways that I communicate, then I might get a parent who just happens to see it and thinks, oh, I want to come out, and then they're more likely to volunteer and be on board, and they would have never heard about ACEs if I hadn't put it out in that way. So make sure that you're using social media as a way to get outside of our bubble. We are in a bubble. We are in the people serving human services, social services, psychology, social work bubble. And so we want to reach your everyday business person. We want to meet, we reach your everyday parent, the employee. We want to reach everyone. And so social media helps us to do that. Let's see. Susie, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think that's a really good point. And I think, each of the social media, including ACEs Connection, all are slightly different and have their own flavor and emphasis. So whereas Twitter might be topic driven and Facebook might be a little more personal, you are cross-pollinating with how your people are connecting with ACEs. Sometimes it's personally as survivors, sometimes it's as policymakers and leaders, and you're helping people that don't always get in the same room together to get in the room together first by connecting online, and then by making that happen in an initiative. And I just wanted to say, I know that there are people that have met online on ACEs Connection that live 10 minutes away from each other and didn't know they were doing similar work. So that's another benefit of when you post and share and are brave and kind of put yourself out there, even just like about a local event, you end up meeting other people who are maybe brand new to the movement or have been at it 20 years and are accessing it in a different place. So that is another beautiful thing about connecting online as well.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Beth, you have your hand raised. Is it possible for you to put your question into the Q&A at the bottom of the screen? Go ahead, Karen.
Oh, I was just going to say that there are so many organizations that are also sharing some of the path that we are on, such as Prevent Child Abuse America, and each state has a PCA chapter. And so I'll tag the state chapter for that, and then the professional organizations, from the ACEs in pediatrics, so at Pediatric Science or whatever, I'm not sure, American Academy of Pediatrics, but on LinkedIn and Twitter, when those groups have pages or ways that you can tag them, that's another way to bring more people to ACEs Connection and maybe get, we had a post just a few minutes ago about librarians, trauma-informed libraries. And so to, find what the National Association is for librarians and put an @ for that, so that more librarians can learn about the importance of trauma-informed practices, because libraries are home base for a lot of communities. So that's just another way to expand our reach as we think about, pulling in everybody from athletes, coaches, first responders, different business sectors, because we really know from doing this work for, Jane's been doing it for 6 years, that the communities that have the greatest cross-sector involvement, the most diversity and types of industries and people involved, those are the ones that really succeed. So, include your church, include the local synagogue, include the mosque, include the hospital, include the library, because they all, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, touches every single one of us. And so to include as many people as we can is where it's at. I see we've got a question.
Yeah, we do have a question. So let's see, it says, what guidelines do you recommend for people who share on their personal pages, then encounter comments from people who engage in arguing, etc.? I think this is a real barrier for people sharing personal social media, sharing on their personal social media, and something that can limit the breadth of the movement. And I agree, especially with those comment sections can get pretty harsh. And so really it's about having a clear understanding of your language on social media. You also need to be trauma informed in your language. And so usually when, at least in my case, when I've encountered negative comments, that person is hurting. and they need a trauma-informed approach, and they need someone to model what it looks like to have conflict resolution and to be trauma-informed in their language, even on social media. So that is what I would say. It's an opportunity. Go ahead, Sissy.
No, I was just going to add, and that's one of the things that all social media sites have some different rules and different ways to handle that. And one of the reasons we require ACES Connection members to use their own names when they're posting is because it prevents that kind of anonymous commenting and what's called trolling. We really don't see that on ACES Connection. It doesn't mean we always agree, but people agree respectfully and have debates and conversations. So that's a very intentional thing we've done on ACES Connection. And it does mean you have to log in to comment, which is something that some people forget. But the reason for that is it does prevent that stuff that can happen when there's anonymous people on some of the other social networks. So I was just going to say you can also pick where it feels most safe too.
And I had just one more thing to say about, you know, we have 35,000 members on ACES Connection, and the Ask the Community is a great place to, whatever you're looking for, to find an answer to a question about, you know, what's a great program for trauma-informed language for children, or I could look on my phone right now and see what some of the questions are from today, but when you post on ACES Connection and the Ask the Community time, sometimes because I'm doing the tweeting, I will tweet out your question. And so then not only will, you know, you have the chance for 35,000 people to see it on ACES Connection, but we've grown our Twitter following to almost 3,300 people. So you can do that too. If you see a question that you would like to help the person find an answer for, you can go in and tweet out the Ask the Community, and that helps people get answers to their questions. And that works for each community page as well. So, you know, Forsyth County, North Carolina community can get their question in front of literally thousands of people, and we can source to each other.
Yeah, thank you very much, both you guys, Sissy and Carrie, for your involvement today. And I just want to close out with our contact information. Each one of us is able to help you in your local area to get an initiative started and can answer any questions that you have about the site. And then I would also like to thank you for participating today. And that will be all that we have for today. So again, thank you for participating, and please join us at ACES Connection as a member and start a local community initiative. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ingrid.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thanks, Sissy. Peace.